My dad was a chemist, and ever since I was a little kid, I've been fascinated by many aspects of the scientific world. Since I frequently accompanied my father to the laboratory, I spent many afternoons in many laboratories, surrounded by bubbling flasks, colorful solutions, and fascinating chemical processes. Because I am an only child, I treasured those times when my father and I bonded over our mutual passion for the subject of chemistry. My mother deserted my father and me in order to be with another guy, and since my father never married again, our family consisted of just the two of us. My mother committed infidelity against my father, and as a result, she left such terrible wounds in his life that he was never able to muster up the confidence to open his heart to another woman. Since I was a youngster, infidelity has seemed like the gravest mistake or offense in the entire world to me. My interest in chemistry has steadily increased over the course of my life. In my spare time, I went deeper into the realm of chemicals and mixes, frequently carrying out experiments in my own home laboratory, which was more of a shack than anything else. I immersed myself in the chemistry community by attending conferences, reading scientific papers, and participating in online conversations with other chemists. On a professional level, I noticed that I felt drawn toward a different path. After deciding to work in the field of information technology, I ultimately worked my way up to the position of director at a prominent company. Even though I went into a completely different subject for my professional life, I was never able to shake the early passion I had for the realm of chemistry. Members of my team at the information technology department, they frequently remarked on how impressed they were by my ability to effortlessly go from addressing difficult technical issues to excitedly expressing the complexities of chemical reactions. People have gone so far as to refer to me as an wizard with a chemistry secret. When I was at work one day, I came face to face with a lovely woman who worked in the human resources department. The moment I laid eyes on her, I had a feeling that we were already connected. My heart was completely won over by her cheerful approach and bright smile, and I couldn't help but develop a love for her as a result. Our connection appeared to get stronger with each new occasion that we had together, such as when we were at work, events, or meetings. I came to realize that, in addition to her stunning appearance, she has a sharp mind and a dry sense of humor. As we spent more time together, I was pleasantly taken aback to find out that she had a deep interest in science as well. When we discussed the topic, her eyes lit up with wonder, and it made her seem really interested. We frequently discussed memories from our childhoods with one another, and I told him about my time working in the chemistry lab that belonged to my father. She listened to what I had to say with genuine curiosity, and as a result, I felt a connection form between us. The activities we engaged in on our dates were the epitome of combining science and technology. We experienced the wonders of the universe through joint activities such as stargazing, visits to museums and planetariums, and other activities. I also opened her eyes to the exciting world of chemistry by showing her some of the experiments that I had seen performed in my father's laboratory when I was younger. As she watched chemical reactions for the first time, she was overcome with excitement and genuine curiosity at the same time. Her eyes lit up with delight. As time went on and we became more intimate with one another, I couldn't shake the feeling that our paths had been predestined to cross. While I was at work, I found out that my company is planning to host a scientific fair in the near future. It was a chance for employees to demonstrate their skills and share information about their interests outside of work. When I thought about taking part in the event and utilizing it as a stage to demonstrate my chemistry talents, my enthusiasm level skyrocketed, and my eyes gleamed with joy. After hearing about it, I discussed it with my girlfriend, and she strongly urged me to grasp the chance when it presented itself. On the day of the event, the expo grounds were alive with creativity and originality from all of the participants. My table had an eye-catching exhibition of chemical reactions, which included a variety of combinations, vivid flames, and captivating reactions. I built the table myself. People from a wide variety of departments swarmed to my booth, eager to see the beauty of chemistry brought to life in front of their very eyes. The judges came up to my booth just as the day was winding down, so that they could examine my display. They declared that I had won the science fair that was held earlier. After the event, I proposed to my girlfriend, and we both agreed that we wanted to tie the knot as soon as humanly possible. The next day, as we were on our way back to our respective homes, we got married in a church and let everyone know about it. The story of our hasty wedding spread like wildfire across the workplace as everyone heard about it. The unexpected turn of events left coworkers in a state of shock and elation at the same time. Nevertheless, despite all of the commotion, there was an evident feeling of delight and contentment. Everything was going perfectly in our lives, and we were on the verge of planning a baby. But all of a sudden, I had to go to another city for some urgent work, as my firm's other branch was facing some technical issue that had not been resolved for many days. So I had to go there for at least 3 months. We were forced to postpone the baby, and within a week, I had already packed my bags and moved to a different location. As soon as I got there, I understood how serious the problem was, and I came to the conclusion that my company did the right thing by sending me here, because I could never have handled this problem by sitting in another city. At first, the two of us had a hell of a time connecting with one another. We couldn't chat with each other, and there were times when it was impossible for us to use FaceTime with one another. This routine was starting to irritate both of us. So my wife decided to surprise me by showing up in my city unannounced one day. However, I was unable to spare any time for her, as a result of how much she was hurt and how unimportant she felt. She decided to cut short her visit and go back home. As I watched her walk away, the realization that my decisions had an effect on our relationship brought on a feeling of intense regret within me. As soon as she left, I attempted to contact her so that I could clarify the situation and express my regret, but none of my messages reached her, and she did not respond to any of my questions. As the days passed, the lack of communication between us continued to weigh heavily on my heart. The idea of living without my wife was intolerable to me, because she meant everything to me. When I finally reached out to my dad for assistance, it was because I was desperate to find out how she was doing. My father, seeing the gravity of the situation, gave his consent to pay a visit to my wife at her place of residence. He was aware of the amount of affection I had for her, and he wished to bring us closer together. During his visit, he discovered her to be extremely distraught, but she was grateful for the gesture nonetheless. My father conveyed my sorrow and true regret to my wife in a tone that was comforting and compassionate. He reassured her that my love for her was genuine, and that although my work had absorbed me, I was beginning to understand the significance of maintaining a healthy work-life balance. She experienced a range of feelings as she listened to my dad talk about his life. She was in pain, but she also recognized the pressures that come with having a successful career. Having said that, she required confirmation that I would place an emphasis on our relationship going forward. After that, we picked up where we left off with our relationship, and I did all in my power to avoid missing even a single day of our FaceTime, even for 5 minutes. But I'm used to doing that every day, and we eventually got back to our regular long-distance routine. I started to observe a shift in behavior on the part of my wife. It all started with quite a few things. During everyday conversations, she had a propensity to become angry over little issues. At first, I didn't give it much thought because I assumed it was just the product of the normal stresses that come with living alone. I chalked it up to the amount of work she had to do and presumed that things would get better in due time. The pattern of her anger grew increasingly obvious as the days turned into weeks and time passed. Even the most innocent of exchanges escalated into heated debates, regardless of the subject matter being discussed. I was at a loss to understand why my wife was so quick to become irritated, and as a result, I found myself attempting to tiptoe around any topics that would cause her to become frustrated. I found myself walking on eggshells. I was having yet another tense chat one evening when I made the decision that it was time to address the issue. I talked to her in a friendly manner and mentioned to her that I was worried about how her recent actions were impacting our connection with one another. I calmed her fears by assuring her that I was truly concerned for her well-being and was eager to learn the source of any unease she may be experiencing. She firmly refused to acknowledge the shift in her conduct. And after that, 3.5 days passed in tranquility. But after that, her attitude relapsed to being full of rage once more. I was unable to understand how to solve this mystery, and now I had no alternative left to use because I had already sent my father once, and I did not want to involve him in every other problem in my personal life. As a result, I made the decision to take a break from our everyday conversations as well as our disputes. I was hoping that my wife would contact me or ask me what had happened so she could figure out why we weren't communicating, but neither of those things took place. I was surprised. I called her after 2 days and asked her why the hell she was doing all that to me, since she already knew I would not be remaining in another place against my will. However, instead of answering my question, she told me that she would call me later because she was with her friends at the time. This caused my heart to sink, and I felt hurt. After a few minutes, by complete coincidence, the best friend of my wife's best friend called me because she was having some trouble with her laptop, so she called me to seek help. Because I was familiar with my wife's entire buddy group, I can assume that she was not out with her other friends if she was not with her best friend. I asked her to give the phone to my wife because I had something so important to tell her, but she informed me that my wife was not with her, and she also told me that she had not seen my wife in days. After that, I inquired as to whether or not she was maybe part of another office group, at which point she informed me that my wife was no longer hanging out with them. She arrived at the workplace right on time and then promptly left. It was my sincere hope that my wife was with her, but it has already been established that she was not with any of her other pals. After the call, my suspicions grew deeper as I already had an example for my mother to leave my father. As a result, I decided to engage a private investigator to watch my wife because I wanted to know what she was hiding and why she was on a spree of breaking ties with all of her social circles. I received the report of the private investigator within a week, and as I sat alone in my living room witnessing the infidelity of my wife, I realized that despite the fact that she was the world to me, she did not give even a second of her consideration before cheating on me. There were a great many photographs, videos, and written messages exchanged. There were pictures of them making out in the lobby of a hotel, in the car that her affair partner was driving, and occasionally in her own car, since she could not take the risk of getting him to our place, because she must have worried that my father could arrive at any point. The private investigator also mentioned in his report that the person with whom my wife was having an affair was a recent hire at our company. In addition to being freshly married, he had just been given the position of head of human resources. I needed some time to go through the implications of this lie, but one thing was certain: I wouldn't leave her alone. I will show her the fault of her ways and teach her that she must never lie to her husband. I made a request to my firm to prolong my stay because problems were not even close to being addressed. I had to lie to my office because I was not able to face my cheating wife, and I also wanted to stay away from her because I needed time to think about my revenge. As soon as I found out about her affair, I cut off communication with her, and she made no effort to contact me either. As a result, I was able to use the entire month to formulate a plan for dealing with my wife. I got a call from my dad, and he told me that he was going on a trip with some of his friends. This sparked an idea in my head, and I managed to persuade my dad to call my wife and tell her that he and I were also going to be out of town. At first, he thought it was silly for me to say that to her, but then I was able to finally convince my old man to do what I wanted him to do by using some illogical tactics on him. And as seemed to be expected following the phone call from my father, she began meeting her lover at our home. This is all I found out about it through my private investigation reports. And the last images I saw showed my wife's affair partner and my wife's affair partner and my wife engaging in anal on my balcony. After looking at that picture, I had enough. I finally formulated my plan and started to implement it. I used the excuse that I had caught the flu and did not want anyone to catch my germs. I took leave for a few days, then traveled back to my city. After traveling, I made sure that my wife was working. I took 2 days to fully install my place with spy cameras. And I also used my father's lab to formulate a chemical that I desired. And on the 3rd day, I finally created that chemical that I had been trying to make, injected it into a bottle, and placed it in my bedroom. I also wrote a dirty message in such a way that my wife and her affair partner both felt that the other person had written it for them, because my P had broken into their phones. And whatever their conversation was, he forwarded it to me. And the universe was also on my side shortly after I developed my chemical. They planned to meet at my home to spend a steamy night. They started making out in my living room while I was on my way back from another city, and then they took their conduct into my living room as well. I was watching them. After what seemed like a long time, they entered my bedroom, and then my wife's affair partner took the tube, rubbed it on his genitalia, and then administered it inside my wife. After that, my wife and her lover were stuck right into each other. When they were shouting about what had happened to them, I was laughing out loud in my car. Finally, after a lot of suffering and trying different things, they called the emergency services. And when the medical help arrived, the two of them were naked and joined into each other. They arrived at the hospital in precisely the same condition, and the entire neighborhood as well as the medical facility were able to see them naked. They underwent very serious procedures. And as a result, my wife lost her capacity to have children, and the man who was having an affair with her lost his genitalia. After the investigation, the authorities arrested me since they discovered my entrance and exit on street cameras. And I was found responsible for destroying their organs. I was sentenced to 8 years in prison. And when I was finally let out, it was only my father and me. After getting divorced, we had to divide all of our possessions, and I was forced to move in with my father after being released from prison. This was because my wife had been compensated more than I was, because of the organs that she had to lose. I never imagined that I would have to make use of my chemical expertise in order to exact my vengeance, because, at the time, I was going through fury, and after the retribution, I had to go through grief. Nevertheless, when I got out of jail, I was a different person altogether. I moved on and forgot about my past, as easily as I might have forgotten a bad dream, and I was ready to start a new chapter in my life. I was unemployed for close to a year until I managed to land a job as an information technology specialist at a local company.